Hi everyone, welcome back to my class. This is Rumana Ali. I hope you all are fine. In today's class, I am going to explain you about the master gland, that is our pituitary gland. Pituitary gland is found in the human brain near the region of hypothalamus. So hypothalamus of a brain is present where you can find one pipe-like structure that opens into a pituitary gland, and that pipe-like structure is called as infundibulum. Infundibulum is the opening into the pituitary gland. Okay, so when you see the structure of pituitary gland, you will be finding two parts in it. One is adenohypophysis and the other part is called as, this one is called as neurohypophysis. So adenohypophysis and neurohypophysis, both these parts are present in a pituitary gland. Inside these parts, you will be finding the presence of anterior pituitary and posterior pituitary. The other name for anterior pituitary part is called as pars distalis, and the other name for posterior pituitary is pars nervosa. In the adenohypophysis, besides pars distalis, that is besides anterior pituitary, one more structure you can see, and that structure is called as pars intermedia. So how this structure is present as an additional one? Pars intermedia. In an embryonic stages, the pituitary gland, it shows this kind of structure. Three parts will be present. One is pars distalis, the other one is pars intermedia, and the third one is pars nervosa. But as the baby grows up, as the human being gets matured, at the time this will combine with this part and it shows some modification, and after the modification of the pituitary gland, in a matured human, you will be finding this kind of structure. Only two parts of a gland will be seen. One is anterior pituitary and the other one is posterior pituitary. Now, what is the role of anterior and posterior pituitary? Let us see. So, here in the hypothalamus, some specialized cells are present. We call these cells as neurosecretory cells. Okay, so neurosecretory cells are present in the hypothalamus. These cells are responsible to send the signals in order to stimulate the pituitary gland. Okay, so here these neurosecretory cells, what do they do? We know that whenever a signal has to be generated in order to release hormone or in order to inhibit the action of a hormone, then some chemicals are going to be released out of these neurosecretory cells. So some of the chemicals are released by the neurosecretory cells. That chemicals, they are either stimulating the hormone to release, stimulating the pituitary gland to release certain hormones. So we call that hormones as releasing hormones. Okay, and these are the chemicals that can stimulate this pituitary gland to inhibit the secretion of hormone. We call that hormones as, and these are the chemicals which are responsible to stimulate the production of inhibiting hormone. Inhibiting hormones are the hormones which inhibits the activity of other hormones. So in this way, releasing hormones and inhibiting hormones, these different types of hormones can be released into the blood by the action of neurosecretory cells. So the chemicals which is released from the neurosecretory cells, they get mixes up in the blood. Okay, these chemicals, they get mixes up into the blood, and here this vein is called as portal vein. So it carries the blood along with these hormones. When the hormones reaches the part called adenohypophysis, then it stimulates this anterior pituitary to release certain hormones in order to show the different activities in a human body, in order to show the change. So this neurosecretory cells, they will not stimulate the posterior pituitary. They will just show its action only on the anterior pituitary gland. It will not show any effect on posterior pituitary gland, and that too, the blood is carried by the portal vein into the anterior pituitary. Once the chemicals reaches the anterior pituitary, the anterior pituitary gland start releasing the hormone. It releases different hormone to show the different actions. This is how the role of neurosecretory cells can be seen in order to stimulate the anterior pituitary. Once the hormones get releases, once the change can be seen, now the releasing hormone should be stopped. The action of the releasing hormone should be inhibited after a period of time, right? So for the inhibition of activity of any hormone, some other hormones are required to inhibit their activity. So those hormones are called as inhibiting hormones. Again, the signals are sending by these neurosecretory cells to the anterior pituitary in order to inhibit the activity of the hormones which are released by it. So some other hormones are released and we call that hormones as inhibitory hormone. So the total control of the anterior pituitary, total stimulation of anterior pituitary is under the control of neurosecretory cells. They are acting like an owner, and anterior pituitary, as they are working based on the signals, based on the chemicals sent by the neurosecretory cells. So the anterior pituitary, they are acting like a servant. They are just taking the signal and they are doing the activity based on the signals, based on the chemicals received by the neurosecretory cells. But this will not happen with the posterior pituitary. Posterior pituitary will not do any work. Some of the cells, nerve cells are present over here, and these nerve cells, they will not stimulate the pituitary gland. They will not stimulate the posterior pituitary in order to release the releasing hormone and to secrete some inhibiting hormone. They will not do so. Just the nerve cells which are present here in this part of the hypothalamus, they will only carry out the activity of releasing hormone. So the hormones, the chemicals which are released by the nerve cell, they will enter into the posterior pituitary, and from there the posterior pituitary just receives the chemicals, and then the chemicals are sent into the blood from posterior pituitary. This is what happened in case of posterior pituitary. It will not release any hormone, just the chemicals which are released by the nerve cell, they are sent into the blood. That chemicals are sent into the blood. So this is what happened in the pituitary gland and also in the region of a brain called hypothalamus. So hypothalamus is the main region of a brain where the nerve cells like neurosecretory cells are present, which stimulates the anterior pituitary. If we talk about the location of the pituitary gland, then this is our brain. The brain shows the outer covering called cranium that is made of sphenoid bone. This sphenoid bone shows one depression in it, and this depression is called as sella turcica. In that depression, the pituitary gland is fixed. It is present in that depression. The depression is called sella turcica, and this is our pituitary gland, and over the pituitary gland, the hypothalamus region of our brain is present. This is the location of the hypothalamus and pituitary gland. So the anterior pituitary, it receives the chemicals, and based on the chemicals that are sent by the neurosecretory cells, they release different types of hormones. The chemicals which are released by the different nerve cells into the posterior pituitary will not have any effect on the posterior pituitary, will not stimulate the posterior pituitary. Just the posterior pituitary send that chemicals into the blood in order to show the different actions in a human body, in order to releases the different hormones by the different parts of a human body. So this is about the hypothalamus and our pituitary gland, which can also be termed as posterior gland, which can also be termed as master gland. Why we call the pituitary gland as master gland? The hormones are the chemicals which are released into the blood from the pituitary gland. They are responsible to stimulate other glands of our body. The hormones which are released from the pituitary gland, they will stimulate the other different glands to secrete different hormones. Okay, let us talk about the hormones that are released from the hypothalamic region and the hormones that are secreted by a gland called pituitary gland, especially from the region adenohypophysis. So there are 9 hormones in total that are released by the hypothalamus, whose secretion, 9 hormones are the hormones whose secretion is whose secretion takes place by the hypothalamus, and 7 hormones are released from the pituitary gland. 7 hormones can be secreted by the pituitary gland. So firstly, we'll see out of 9, the first hormone is our growth hormone releasing hormone. In short, GHRH we can say, and the other name of this growth hormone releasing hormone is somatocrinin. See, one point you need to remember, whenever any hormone needs to be secreted by the pituitary gland, some of the hormones are released by the hypothalamus, and that hormones will be of 2 types. One is releasing hormone and the other one is inhibiting hormone. So first one is growth hormone releasing hormone, which can also be termed as somatocrinin. When this hormone is released by the hypothalamus, it will stimulate the pituitary gland to secrete growth hormone. Then this growth hormone is secreted by the pituitary gland, which can also be called as somatotropin, and this growth hormone is responsible to show the growth of the different parts of a human body. When the growth hormone enters into the blood, it can reaches the different targeted organs like muscles, liver, bone, connective tissues. All these are the different parts of our body that needs growth hormone. Only our muscles will not show the growth. Each and every part of our body will show the growth, and they require the growth hormones in order to show the growth. So these growth hormones, once it enters into the blood, it can be carried to the different targeted organs like muscle, liver, bone, connective tissue, where the glucose can be broken down and the proteins are released, and that proteins are very useful to promote growth of the different organs. This is how the growth hormone can be regulated by the different parts of our body. Now, if this growth hormone continuously secreted from the pituitary gland, this leads to many problems. It will not be, we cannot call that condition as normalcy. It will lead to an abnormality. So there should be a hormone that inhibits its activity after a particular time. So the other hormone can also be released by the hypothalamus, and we call that hormone as growth hormone inhibiting hormone, GHIH, which is also named as somatostatin. Okay, this is called as somatocrinin, this one is somatostatin, and this one is called as somatotropin. So the stimulation of the growth hormone is under the control of releasing hormone, is under the control of hypothalamus. When the hypothalamus releases releasing hormone, it shows the positive effect on growth hormone. That means it stimulates the growth hormone to release it into the blood, to be secreted into the blood. But when the growth hormone inhibiting hormone is released by the hypothalamus, then it shows the negative effect. It inhibits the effect of the growth hormone, so that the balance can be maintained. In this way, releasing hormone and inhibiting hormone, these 2 types of hormones are released by the hypothalamus in order to regulate the function of growth hormone, which is released by the pituitary gland. One, GHRH, and the second hormone that is released by the hypothalamus is GHIH, growth hormone inhibiting hormone. And here pituitary, only one hormone we talked about, that is growth hormone, somatotropin. Let us move to the next one. We have to see all the 9 hypothalamic hormones and 7 pituitary hormones. Okay, so another hormones that are released by the hypothalamus, they are again releasing and inhibiting hormone. Here, in the pituitary gland, one hormone is responsible for the milk production. So that hormone is named as prolactin. So the different hormones like prolactin releasing hormone and prolactin inhibiting hormone are the hypothalamic hormones. So this PRH shows the positive effect on prolactin, and PIH, which is also named as dopamine, it shows the negative effect on prolactin. When the prolactin releasing hormone is released, it stimulates the secretion of prolactin. When the prolactin inhibiting hormone is released, it inhibits the secretion of prolactin. This is what happens. Okay, so in this way, third and fourth hypothalamic hormone we have seen, and this one is our second pituitary hormone, which is responsible for milk production. This hormone, when it enters into the blood, when it reaches the targeted organ, that is mammary gland, at the time in the mammary gland some specialized cells are present, and we call that cells as alveoli. In the alveoli, in the lumen of alveoli, the milk is stored. So whenever the milk needs to be secreted, at the time one more hormone is released, and we call that hormone as oxytocin. So by the release of oxytocin only, the milk can be produced by the oxytocin, and it can be removed from the lumen of alveoli. So oxytocin is a hormone which allows the flow of milk from the lumen of alveoli. In this way, the second pituitary hormone is prolactin, and the third one is oxytocin. Now let us see the other hypothalamic and pituitary hormones. Okay, the next hypothalamic hormone is our melanocyte stimulating releasing hormone, and the other one is melanocyte stimulating inhibiting hormone. The positive effect of MRH is shown on the melanocyte stimulating hormone, and the negative effect of MIH can be shown again on the melanocyte stimulating hormone. This is a hormone which is released by the pituitary gland. So once the release of MRH is going to happen, then it shows the positive effect. That means it stimulates the secretion of melanocyte stimulating hormone. When the MIH is released, at the time it shows the negative effect. That means it inhibits the secretion of melanocyte stimulating hormone. After the melanocyte stimulating hormone is released into the blood, it will enter into the target organ, right? So it will reaches the cells called melanocyte, where it balances the range of melanin. Melanin is a substance that is responsible to give the skin color or an eyeball color. The color of the skin and an eyeball is based on the composition of the melanin. It needs to be balanced, and that balance can be maintained by the melanocyte stimulating hormone. The next one is TRH. TRH stands for thyroid stimulating releasing hormone. Once it is released, it stimulates the secretion of thyroid stimulating hormone. When the thyroid stimulating hormone is released, it enters into the targeted organ, and we know the targeted organ is our thyroid gland. So when the thyroid stimulating hormones reaches the thyroid gland, it stimulates the thyroid gland to release thyroid hormones, and these thyroid hormones will show the negative effect on thyroid stimulating hormone and also on thyroid stimulating releasing hormone. In the beginning, I told you that from the hypothalamus, two hormones are released. One is releasing hormone and the other one is inhibiting hormone. But here we require only releasing hormone. We do not require any inhibiting hormone, as the thyroid hormone itself shows the negative effect on both thyroid stimulating hormone and thyroid stimulating releasing hormone. Thyroid hormone is responsible to show the inhibiting effect. That is the reason we do not require any thyroid stimulating inhibiting hormone. Up till we have discussed about 7 hypothalamic hormones, and we have seen 5 pituitary hormones. Remaining 2 hypothalamic hormones and 2 are pituitary, that we are going to discuss now. Okay, our next hypothalamic hormone is gonadotropin releasing hormone, which shows the positive effect on the pituitary gland in order to release the 2 different hormones, and these hormones are follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. These 2 hormones are released by the gonadotropin. So these 2 hormones, when they enter into the blood, it is going to reach the target organ. So these 2 hormones reaches the testes in the males, and they will reaches the ovary in the females. These 2 are the reproductive parts that are present in the human, that are present in the body of a human. Testes are the male reproductive parts and the ovary are the female reproductive parts. So when these hormones reaches these parts, they stimulate these different glands of our body in order to release the different hormones. So when the luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone reaches the testes, it stimulates the testes to release testosterone, and when they reaches the ovary, it stimulates the ovary in order to secrete the hormone called estrogen. These 2 hormones, testosterone in males and estrogen in females, These two hormones are responsible to show negative effect on gonadotropin. That is, it inhibits the secretion of follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, and it also shows the negative effect on gonadotropin releasing hormone. It stops the secretion of gonadotropin releasing hormone. Here also, how we have seen in the case of thyroid stimulating hormone, only releasing hormone we required. Likewise, in this case of gonadotropin also, we require only releasing hormone. We do not require any inhibiting hormone, as the different hormones like testosterone and estrogen are acting like an inhibiting hormone, and they inhibit the secretion of follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. So this is what happens during the secretion of hypothalamic and pituitary hormones. The last hypothalamic hormone is our corticotropin releasing hormone. Here in this case also we do not require any inhibiting hormone, just we need releasing hormone from the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus secreted a hormone called corticotropin releasing hormone. When it gets released, it stimulates the pituitary gland to release one another hormone, that is adrenocorticotropin hormone. This hormone reaches our kidney, reaches our adrenal gland. When it reaches our adrenal gland, it stimulates the adrenal gland to releases one more hormone, that is cortisol. And cortisol is a hormone that acts as an inhibiting hormone, and it shows the negative effect on adrenocorticotropic hormone and also on corticotropin releasing hormone. So in the last three cases, we do not require any inhibiting hormone, as the different hormones itself acting like an inhibiting hormone. So in this way, all the 9 hypothalamic hormones we have seen, and even we have seen the 7 pituitary hormones. Let's have a quick recap of all the 9 hypothalamic hormones and 7 pituitary hormones. So here hypothalamic hormones includes growth hormone releasing hormone and growth hormone inhibiting hormone. These two hormones shows its stimulation on a hormone that is released or secreted by the pituitary gland, that is called as growth hormone, which is also named as somatotropin, and it is responsible for the regulation of the growth in the human body. The next one is prolactin releasing hormone and prolactin inhibiting hormone. These two hormones shows the effect on the secretion of prolactin, which is responsible for the milk production. The next one is melanocyte stimulating releasing hormone, melanocyte stimulating inhibiting hormone. This shows its effect on melanocyte stimulating hormone, which is responsible to maintain the composition of a substance called melanin. Next one is thyroid releasing hormone, which shows its effect on thyroid stimulating hormone, and this hormone is responsible to secrete other hormones like thyroid hormone. We can name it as thyroxine. The next one is gonadotropin releasing hormone, which stimulates the different pituitary hormones like follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. These two hormones are responsible to secrete some other hormones like testosterone and estrogen from the different reproductive parts in a human body. The next and the last one is corticotropin releasing hormone, which shows its stimulation on adrenocorticotropic hormone, and this the secretion of this hormone stimulates the adrenal gland to release cortisol. In this way, these are the different hormones that are secreted by the hypothalamus, and these are the different hormones that are released by the pituitary gland. In total, 9 hypothalamic hormones are present and 7 pituitary hormones are present. I hope it's clear to you. Meet you in next class. Goodbye.